Good afternoon, everyone. We're here with Mr. Richard Arch, better known as Dick Arch. Lots of people just call him Uncle Dick. He is, in my opinion, one of Cayman's living historians. He has so much information in that brain of his, and he's a fan here at CMR. So we get to utilize his knowledge quite a bit behind the scenes, and I've been planning to do one of our conversations with segments with him, which we will still do, but we wanted to do just a brief little interview today because you guys would recall that there is this bit of a situation now with these grave sites being moved. And I went to the grave site not really knowing who these people are, but I saw one name that I know that Uncle Dick had mentioned to me, which is that of a Dottie McCoy, which we think that there is a Dottie McCoy who's related to me, and I wasn't sure if that was her. But anyway, he knows exactly who these people are, at least know the history of who they are for those three graves. And there's also some Watlers in there. We're going to speak to Watler a little bit later on, who's going to give some family insight into who those individuals are as well. So, you know, folks, at the end of the day, I mean, if we can't have respect for those who passed on and know a little bit about their history, which I think we should all do a better job at trying to find out about where we've come from and who we are, then, you know, it begs the question, you know, it's no wonder that sometimes we all feel a little bit lost. And I'm really appreciative to people like Uncle Dick here, who is so gracious to always take time out of his schedule to speak with us and tell us, you know, any little bits of history and information that he can share. So good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us, you and your little puppy here.
Good afternoon.
Well, I'm delighted to finally have you on the show. This is not as formal as perhaps we could be doing it, but you know, you've just got so much information. What do you know about this grave site that is in, I know now we call that area Grand Harbor. What was that area called before it was Grand Harbor?
That was Red Bay.
That's still considered part of Red Bay?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's right on the borderline of Prospect, really. Where that graveyard is, it was actually for the Farrells and Thompsons and others. But let me get you straight on Aunt Dolly.
Okay.
The Dolly McCoy that's buried there was Dolly Jackson, Miss Jan, the teacher's aunt. She married a McCoy from Northside, and that's where the McCoy came in for her.
Okay.
She has no connection, no relationship whatsoever with the Aunt Dolly that I've been trying to trace, that used to live in Boilers when I was a youngster.
Okay. And that's the one then that you think is related to me, that Aunt Dolly.
She is either by law or blood, I'm not sure which, but Aunt Dolly in Boilers was definitely related to your father.
Wow. Okay. So what do we know? I mean, I mentioned a few names at that grave site. What do we know about those three particular graves? So we have this Dolly McCoy. We have another name that sounds like a European name.
Yes.
That's in that first grave
site.
That
was the mother of Dr. Krinsky. Dr. Krinsky was a Polish doctor here 30, 40 years ago. And Mr. Lawrence Thompson married her as his second wife. And her mother was obviously aging, and she brought her here.
Okay.
So she's buried, the mother is buried there.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting that they would. Do you remember where they were from? Where's that name? You said Polish.
She was positively Polish. I knew her quite well. She visited me here many, many times.
Oh, wow. Okay. And they didn't send her back to Poland then? They just decided to bury her here?
As the mother is buried, and Dr. Krinsky returned to the US, and my wife corresponded with her for some time, and she got dementia. I'm not sure, but I'm positive that she did by now. Wow. Last we heard, she was in a home somewhere in Florida.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay, well, that explains who that first grave is. So they probably wouldn't have any family in Cayman then?
Well, the Lawrence Thompsons children and grandchildren would be related to,
Oh,
by law,
right.
to Dr. Krinsky.
Right. Okay. And then what about the second grave? I'm trying to remember that name now. There was the Dottie. And do you remember the name of the other one? Your brain might be a little bit better than mine, but there was 3 graves.
Sandra, my head is full of memories, but the old age has got it packed up and filed away.
So we had, so that Dottie you're saying was a Jackson originally, and then she married a McCoy.
Yes.
Okay, and the other name
the
was
older
an Eden.
Kimanians.
Oh yes, it was an Eden.
The older Kimanians will remember that Aunt Dolly. That Aunt Dolly she used to work at Comart with Wilco.
Okay.
Where the Landmark building is now.
Right. Okay.
She was a lovely lady. She pretty well dressed, always pretty. Riding her bicycle up and down.
The other person was an Eden. Can't remember the first name now. But that would have been an Eden in there, and there's several Edens in there
Well,
as
the
well.
Edens and Farrells were, married to each other and so on and so forth. Janie Farrell, her house would have been almost in between the building that's going up there by Hurley's and the other apartments just towards the west of it. I remember it well. It used to have a dock. In fact, sorry about that. In fact, Carl Bush, Captain Carl, told me that when he was a youngster, the water there by South Sound, Red Bay, in that area, was so deep that the schooners would sail up the coast and anchor or dock right where that house is now.
Oh wow.
Today, I don't think you could. I believe you could walk and wouldn't be more than your waist deep there now.
Wow.
I remember as a boy we used to go and get clams from there. There some beautiful big clams used to be there on a little piece of beach.
Now, can you tell us about? I mean, I was curious this morning. A lot of people said to me that I was curious why Caymanians always use beachfront for grave sites, but people said, which I think is quite logical during the morning show, that it's because it was just easier to dig in the sand to put it in the grave. But
I'll give you a good excuse and reason for that.
yes.
My old uncle sold 1 mile of that West Bay beach to Mr. Greenall for £100.
Wow.
And the excuse he gave the family was it was only good for growing spur grass and breeding sandflies. That's the value they gave it. But yes, the sandy area was better, easier for graves because remember in those days you couldn't keep a corpse more than 24, 36 hours. So you had to find some place that was easily
Accessible.
convenient for digging the grave.
Right.
So that's why most graves were in that area.
Wow. Now, I mean, this is, we'll see what ends up happening here, but it looks like they're going to be relocating these 3 graves. Are you aware of any protocols involved in moving graves?
I know that about a year or so ago, there was a public notice that government intended having to move those graves, and they were asking anyone that could identify them. Because they're doing a lane, they're doing another lane coming from east towards South Sound and Georgetown. That would really ease the traffic in that area, but it would be it's going to be a terrible bottleneck another 50 feet down the road.
Right.
Development has got away from us. We're going to have to buy helicopters.
We can't afford those, but anyway. So this is quite interesting. I guess, like I said, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But thank you for the little history on that. I mean, we have to sit down and talk to you about so many different things. I feel like you know a lot. So, just in recent times, you and I have started talking, but you knew my father and his mother, and you've heard all the stories about them. So I'm very, very interested to just find out more about who I'm connected to, because I didn't know until recently that I'm family to the McCoys. I never knew that.
Well, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Well, the Aunt Dolly from Boilers, I feel certain that she was a Buddentown McCoy, but her mother, as far as I know, was from East End. And the McCoys were an early family here, and they spread out. Well known, well respected. She was a pretty little woman. Her hair was down beyond her waist. Very quiet, and she was. I think she was either in-law or sister-in-law or sister to a Brona Seymour. That's Concy Seymour and Hewitt Seymour, who was a butcher here. I've got quite a bit packed away in my archive up in between my eyes, but I can't remember it right now.
No problem. So you're thinking that she might have been maybe an aunt of some kind to my grandmother?
I think she was an aunt
To Miss Jane.
probably to Jane.
Yeah.
Jane was Ulrich's mother, and Douglas and a couple others, and your Aunt Lottie.
Yes.
I don't remember Jane, to be honest with you, but I've heard of her all the time.
Yeah.
They were quite a respectable family living in Boilers, and it's a long story, but that family got into Boilers, got property in Boilers because of their relationship with the Edens, connection with the Edens.
Wow. Okay.
That area, that general area, was known as Egypt because it was the most productive part of the island at that time, of Georgetown.
Really? Productive in terms of
Cotton,
like crops and
cotton, sugar cane, just about everything else, because the very first note in a history book here in Hearst's book was dated 1734, and that refers to what is now Halfway Pond by Hosea Station as being a planting walk.
Wow. Amazing. Huh. That's interesting, because you just made me recall, my grandfather's little piece there where those apartments are now. I always remember back in there were all kind of trees growing, papaya, like all sorts of different.
That's what I'm telling you. That was Egypt.
Yes.
Land of milk and honey.
Amazing. Huh. Wow. It's good to know, because of course, these are the things that we didn't necessarily know, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of course, at that stage when I was a boy, Walker's Road wasn't even there.
Right.
The Boilers Road today from South Church Street going into Boilers area was a footpath, 6 feet. And it went right up to about where the school area is now. And then it was pick and go wherever you could get your foot, because again it was always flooded, and the area there by the Seventh-day Adventist school, you weren't able to walk beyond there without slipping down.
Wow.
It was again Egypt.
Yes.
Milk and honey.
Yes.
Crabs, everything else. In fact, there was a railroad from the south coast where the Foster dive shop is, there on South Church Street.
Right.
Across almost into that same area where the Seventh-day Adventist school is.
We had a railroad in Cayman.
We had it was railroad irons. They used to. It was a push cart type thing.
Wow.
They loaded what's the word? guana, bat manure, and so on, for shipping for fertilizer. They collected it there, and they had another one area in West Bay they collected it from.
The things you learn, truly amazing.
I remember my son in school one day, he had a project about early development, and he asked me about if there was any railroads here, and I said, yeah, there are 3. And he wrote it down, and the teacher marked it as error. She failed him on the paper, but there was three for Guana, and on the Georgetown dock there was another railroad between the dock where the ships would unload on this flat car, and the men would push it up to the warehouse close to like in front of the Presbyterian church.
So she failed him, not even knowing about Cayman's history.
Well, that is our problem, Sandra.
Yes.
Everybody came here yesterday knows
That's
more
true.
about us than we know about
That is
ourselves.
so true. Wow, that's why I think it's so important to speak to persons like yourself to really get even just this snippet of information, because there's so much that we don't know. It's just truly
Very
amazing.
true.
Yes, wow. So you have spent most of your life or all of your life here in this area?
Apart from the 5 years at sea,
Yes.
my original house was about 1,000 yards to the west of where I am right now.
Wow.
I could go on my roof here and see the roof of my old house, looking to.
Amazing. So you spent 5 years. How old were you when you went to sea? Do you remember?
I think it was 18 or 19.
Okay. Yeah, and you only stayed away for 5 years. Yes.
Yeah, I made up my mind I was going to do 2 trips. From the time I made up my mind to go to sea, I made up my mind it was 2 trips, and I did a successful first trip, and the second trip I was now 6 weeks when they tied up the ship and wanted to send me home to come back again. And I told the captain, I say, if you send me home, that's it, I'm not coming back. And I wouldn't like to burn my bridges,
Right.
because National Bulk in those days, if you didn't give them a full year, they wouldn't call you again.
Oh, I see.
So I went from that ship to 2 others
Okay. So you were committed to 1-year contracts at that time?
at that time.
Yes. And this national bulk, I mean, I hear all the seamen talking about it. I guess that was the big...
It was, we all refer to it as National Bulk Carriers, but in truth and fact, National Bulk Carriers was the American company that owned this other company that was Universe Tank Ships. That we were employed with Universe Tank Ships, but you go to the office to ship out or anything, and you went to National Bulk.
Okay.
National Bulk was formed by a German, D.K. Ludwig, and some Caymanians were his early officers. And he never forgot the officers that helped him, because many times they went without pay until they could get money. He bought surplus ships, and he even took some of them on to Japan, cut them in 2 and made them longer.
Wow.
And then eventually he started the first ship welding company where the ships were put together by welding rather than rivets in Japan.
Okay. So because his early experiences were with Caymanians, he always kind of...
Captain Bawden and Cyril Rich and Captain Southwell, who was an American, but those 3 people, Ludwig took care of them for the rest of their lives because they stuck by him.
Amazing. So in the life of a seaman, is 5 years considered, was that an average amount of time? Was that more on the low end? Like how long did Caymanian men...
That was a low end really.
Yeah.
Most of those seamen, some of them would go out one trip for 5 years.
Wow. It was a lifetime
Yeah,
career.
I was lucky enough that when I came home after 5 years, BWI was an airline here, and they had a job opening, and I knew one of the people that worked there, and she saw me as I came off the plane and said, "Come see me tomorrow morning." And believe it or not, I came home on the 28th of March, I think it was, and I had a job with a necktie. First time in my life I wore a necktie was the 1st of April, 1960.
Wow. It's amazing. So then you went from the shipping to the airline business.
Yeah. And my wife and I went into some tourist shops as well, perfume and fine jewelry. In fact, Landmark Building, Margaret and myself bought the Cuthbert Bawden shop, what everyone knew as Willie Bawden's shop. We bought that, and we bought the English shop from Mrs. Cook Bawden and built Landmark.
So your wife was named Miss Margaret.
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking about this because my aunt Adonia, who they call Topsy, always talks about this Miss Margaret that she used to work for. Would that have been your wife?
Yes.
Okay.
Adonia's a lovely lady.
Oh my gosh. Okay, because she always says how she worked in this retail store.
Yeah.
Selling luggage and jewelry.
Jewelry. We sold it. We
Wow.
introduced Hallmark cards to Cayman.
Wow.
We brought them here, and when we sold, we would have for Christmas shipment of Hallmark cards would be in the $5,000 or $6,000 range. At some of those cards sold at 25 cents each.
Wow. I guess they sold
But
very
40
well.
and 40 and 50 large cartons would come in at a time.
Yes. And people just loved the Hallmark cards.
But Adonia was one of our lovely ladies.
Yes.
Margaret and Adonia were good buddies up until she left me.
Wow. I just right now putting that together because I hear her talking about her, I think it might have been her first job when she came to Georgetown.
I wouldn't doubt it.
And yeah, she's always talking about Miss Margaret, and I think you guys also had Samsonite suitcases.
Yeah, we brought Samsonite. We introduced Samsonite suitcases.
Because I keep hearing her talk about these Samsonite suitcases as well as a memory. Wow, that's amazing.
Another thing we brought here was Cayman had just really started skin diving, and all of the bezels on the watches, if you would set it for the time you wanted to be underwater, but if you were unfortunate enough to scrape, you would change the time, and you never knew when you had to come up. I was very friendly with one of the owners of a company called Delma Watch Company. And I told him, I said, look, you need to fix something there that it doesn't back up. And he introduced that to dive watches.
Wow.
And it's my watches, we sold enough watches in this island that company gave us a name, Delma Caymanian.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah. And I still have a few.
Huh. That's amazing. So you were in business for yourself. You became an entrepreneur.
Yes, we
with
didn't
your
have
wife.
any partners at all.
Yes. We
We always said that we would only go in partnership with anyone that we could sleep with.
That's a good motto. I like that. Very good.
Yeah.
You kept it in the family together.
Yeah.
Yes. Beautiful. And how long were you in the airline business for then? How long did you do that for?
We only sold that out about 5 years ago.
Oh.
Basically from 60, changing companies.
Yes.
BWI is suspended in 71 or 2. Air Jamaica came to me and said, I want to come to Cayman, will you help me?
Okay.
And we started Air Jamaica here.
Oh wow. Okay.
There wasn't even space in the airport terminal for us. You notice I said for us, there was space,
Yes.
but they wouldn't help us. They insisted that I build my own terminal. Air agencies had the only fully air-conditioned airport terminal up there.
Wow.
My company was the first company here with computers.
Wow. And you guys brought Air Jamaica here?
Air Jamaica, and well, those days when we brought Air Jamaica in, they were partly owned by Air Canada, so it was really an Air Canada computer system. But I had a good life.
Yes. Wow, that's amazing. I feel like I could sit down with you all day and we could talk about so many different things, but I wanted to keep it a little bit short today because I did tell you that this was really just to focus on the grave thing. But as you can see, you start talking about different things.
Well,
and
if I'd known you were coming, I would have printed my file on Aunt Dolly, and it would I could be a bit more informative. But
we'll do that another day for
Yep.
sure. But thank you so much for your time. I'm always so appreciative of the information that you share with us, and I know you're just always willing to share, and I think that's so wonderful.
well, call anytime. If I can't remember it, I know I've got it written down or computerized.
Yes, wonderful. All right, well, thank you, folks. We're going to speak to Mr. Watler in a little bit as well. He's going to add some insight into just some additional information about some of his family members that he says are at that grave location. So stay tuned for a bit more. This isn't over yet. Thank you so much.
Brainard can fill you in on those files. Good.
Yes.
His mother's house was just down the road, just on the South Sound Road.
Yes.
And 32 Hurricane. No, it was further down by Bel Air. That's where their house was. And believe it or not, the sand had moved. We're off now, right?
No, you're still going.
Oh God. The sand has moved in that area so badly that their house lot would have been halfway out to the reef.
So that's interesting because you know what's happening with 7 Mile Beach now and the shifting of the sand and the shoreline disappearing. You're saying that this is just how nature is.
That is not nature at all. That's damn fool stupidness by developers.
Oh.
To be sorry about that
yeah,
word.
well, be frank. Yes.
One of those hotels, when it was going down there, a friend of mine who was connected with what was happening, and I went to the groundbreaking of that hotel, and he and I looked at it and said, but that place, that swimming pool is going to be out in the sea. And we raised enough cane that they made them move it, but there's still, that building is still halfway, at least 30 feet closer to the sea than it should be. And you go by there today, you'll see the breakwaters in the sea.
Wow. Okay, so that's not quite what was happening in South Sound.
You know, not quite, because it had started to move out. That sand had started to move out by that time, but just about, I guess, late 50s, 60s, was a lot of reclamation there. In fact, there was a pond across the street called Fish Pond. 80 Parsons, the clerk of courts, used to go there and fish for tarpon all the time. It had a little wharf out in the middle of it and everything. And a developing company brought a dredge in, pumped up from all that sand and filled that area. And you remember last year we had some sinkholes.
Right.
That is where the water that used to go in and out from the sea to that pond started to collapse again.
Wow. I feel like Mother Nature is always going to reclaim it and take it back.
Well, you know, we have enough land. It's a small island, but it's enough land for all of us that we don't need to go out in the sea to build.
Yeah. All right, my dear. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Some wise words there.
Well, I'll send you my bill.
Sounds good.
Sandra, I enjoy your work. It's an excellent contribution to us.
Thank you.
I can always call you and say, well, Sandra, you're not quite right, and you will correct it. And that is something that you must never lose sight of.
Yes.
You must never, it must be a policy that you never change. If you don't know, say you will find out.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. Thank you. All right, folks, stay tuned. All right, folks, so good afternoon and welcome back. We're here with Mr. Brainard Watler from South Church Street, who's joining us this afternoon, and he's here to give us some information on the gravesite in Prospect that we were at earlier. Just a bit of history and who is there and what his connection would be to some of those people. He has a wealth of knowledge and information, and he's going to share just a snippet of that with us today. So good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Miss Sandra. Thanks for coming by.
Yes, thank you so much.
A friend of mine sent me that this morning on my little small phone there, my little cell phone, because I don't get all of this stuff on these other Facebooks and stuff like that. I'm an old guy, I'm 81 years of age, and I don't learn all that sort of something. I just take life easy now and go along. So it was very interesting to hear what Miss Sandra was saying there. So I decided to contact her and give her a little buzz. So after a bit I got the number, called her, and this is the result of it now. I've heard her there this morning asking some questions, and I'll do my best to try to fill in some of the answers for you. The Watler situation there, Winston Watler and his wife Dora. Winston was my father's brother.
Okay.
They actually lived in an old family home that is Aunt Dora's family home, just a little bit on the Georgetown side of where that graveyard is now. That family there consisted of Uncle Winston, Aunt Dora, and Aunt Dora's sister Myrtle. Her Aunt Dora's father was a man by the name of Leecroft Eden.
Right.
Her mother was one of the from the Farrell family. A lot of people don't realize, but it was quite a nice family, size family there in that area. And that area was known as Spring Gardens.
Wow. Okay.
And it was Herman Farrell and his wife, Miss Janie Farrell. And they had some sons, and I think that's where you find them buried there. Carl Farrell from up in Low Valley is actually the grandson from there. And Aunt Dora's people is all in there. And then the Farrells had Miss Janie, and them had some daughters that married away, and that is where the Brown come in yonder. Some of her people there.
Okay.
And so it's a mix of surnames in there, but they're all originally connected somewhere along the line there with the Farrells in that area there.
Now, I personally, and of course I don't know a whole lot of Cayman history, that's why I love speaking to people like yourself, but the Farrells, where did they come from? Because that name doesn't sound quite as familiar. Do you know anything about where they were from?
I can't say exactly where they were from, probably someplace. Farrell probably from, if you look it up, you'd probably find out it's probably from Ireland or Scotland or somewhere there.
Yeah.
Because what you have to realize, Miss Sandra, is that here in Cayman we are a very mixed race of people. Very, very mixed race.
Yes.
So we have a few that the surnames have continued to go on, but you have some of them that the surnames are finished. There's still some Farrell surnames here though, because Carl Farrell and his brother Monty only died here a year ago, and I think Monty has a son that's going by the Farrell surname. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
But they were Jane Farrell's and Herman Farrell's grandchildren. Their father was Carlton Farrell, and Carlton Farrell was married to Miss Elvira from up in Low Valley. So they lived up that side of the world. And then it was also Ashby Farrell was Mr. Herman and Miss Jane's son. He lived there in the house. I don't think he was all that well at the time. And then Uncle Winston's little boy is buried there. I far as I remember, he was like about 4 years old when he developed some infection, and he passed away.
So that was the little small grave that I saw. Oh, wow.
The small grave that you saw, yes,
Yes.
ma'am, that was his grave. Though some of those vaults there, I actually helped build those vaults.
Wow.
So I went way back into it there.
Yes. Okay.
Family connections and what have you.
So that is actually a private grave site.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yep.
Now, you're also asking about the lady there, Miss Dolly. Well, Miss Dolly is actually from Bodden Town. She was a Jackson. And I guess I would be okay to say that Miss Polly, who does the nice corned beef sandwiches, that's her aunt.
Okay.
And she was originally married to a Harvey Farrell.
Okay.
But he left Cayman, and like a lot of people who left Cayman, especially the men, they never came back. So he went, whatever, if he died over there or what, I don't know. And then in long years after then, she married the gentleman from Northside, Mr. McCoy. So that is why you see her going there now by McCoy.
So despite her remarrying, she still basically got buried with her husband's original.
With her husband's original people
Yes.
buried there in that private graveyard of theirs there.
That's interesting.
Very interesting. Uncle Winston's, well, his father-in-law, Lee Craft's house, like I said, was just a little bit on the downside from that graveyard. And then in 1970, what, 70, 71, 72, somewhere around there, we took that house down in sections and brought it and put it on Uncle Winston's house lot there in Halfway Pond, which is right across the road there from Amelia's restaurant,
Right.
where I have some apartments now.
Okay.
That was his house lot from his Watler family.
Okay.
And that is where Aunt Dora, Uncle Winston, and Myrtle resided then for many years. And then both of them developed with cancer, and they passed away within a few months of one another.
So that's the grave that I saw, because I thought it was so interesting. One was born in like, I think it was 1909, and then the next one 1910, but they died literally, one was like May and just months apart.
About 6 months apart.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Interesting.
that I know, because I stayed
Yes.
there, me and my wife Maisie, stayed there and took care of them through all of that time yonder.
Wow.
It wasn't an easy deal.
Yes. So
And-
back in those days, you would just move a house. You would disassemble it and move it.
Well, that would be the one way that they could get it. It would
Yeah.
not be that expensive, because even back then, you know, you just didn't get things for nothing, that's for
Yeah.
sure. So the family home was there.
Right.
And far as I know, Aunt Dora did not have any brothers. She had another sister, Vera. And Vera had married to a Thompson, and they lived in America, up around Cadillac, Michigan, and about up there is where they're at. And then after Uncle Winston and Aunt Dora passed away, Vera's daughters took Myrtle up there with them for a while until Myrtle passed away. They also had a brother, Herman Farrell. Herman Thompson, I beg your pardon. Thompson. And that's what you see there. Had Herman Thompson. That is Aunt Dora's nephew then, in other words. Her sister Vera's son.
Right.
He used to come out and visit with them there at Crew Road. I knew him. He was a big man. He had beautiful straight black hair. He looked almost, his hair like it would be, you know, Indian type of hair. White man, but they were nice people. And Myrtle was like an angel A lovely little soul. She never got married. She was a lovely person. And so was Aunt Dora. They were all good, solid, decent, kind people. Aunt Dora worked for all her lifetime, I guess, for Dr. Roy McTaggart in his places in Georgetown. And life, you know, was Uncle Winston was actually in charge of the customs up the airport yonder for a long time. He was in the civil service there.
Okay.
He's a brother to Uncle Winston and Daddy, my father, Royal Watler. That was a big family, you know. It was 9 children, 7 sons and 2 daughters.
Wow. Now this this uncle that you're speaking of, he would have been younger than your father?
He was younger than Daddy. He was some of the youngest ones. My father was among the oldest one.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Very interesting.
But that's what took place in that little cemetery there, and it's private.
Yeah.
And I still wonder if removing those 3 graves is, I guess, kind of new hair for us in Cayman, another one of our new ways to go. But I'm still wondering whether it is going to be worth the problems and the upheaval to do that. How much more can that help that situation up there with the traffic? Just moving 3 graves?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know, but you know, I'm not in the government and I don't make the decision, so all I can do is just, you know, go along with it. But to me personally, I don't see the advantage of it. It's like I always heard about, my mother says, like the Paddy's Pillar case, come to more than it's worth. However, you all might all understand that it comes to more than it's worth. So that's, you know, but those things happen.
And this concept of moving graves, it does seem, even in today's time, to me a little bit strange, but in days gone by, that's certainly not something that would have happened. I mean, you'd find a way to move the road if you had to before you moved a grave.
Yeah. The graves was, you know, who can remember back, the graveyards were always well kept. People kept going each, at least Sunday time, weekend time, putting bouquets on, sanding the graves, and especially in West Bay. Oh my goodness, beautiful to look at. But nowadays, most people don't remember where the people are buried or anything like that. And we're changing and changing more and becoming a different people for some reason or the other.
Yes.
I hope it'll be for the best, but to me personally, no. I prefer my old time ways when, like I was just telling Miss Sandra here, how close me and her father was. She didn't know all of that. Yes, we all lived here together in this area. And we seen one another all the time. We knew exactly who was what. But I could tell her some stories, but maybe some it would be good on this area, in this area here. Anything more you want me to add to that, Miss Sandra?
No, I think for our purposes, but we're going to be talking to you hopefully more because, like I was, telling our audience, our listeners, that we're going to be having these segments called Conversations With, where we really dig into Cayman history. Because your history as an individual and as a family is collectively our history as a people.
That's correct. That's correct.
We're all connected. We're
all there again, and I'll probably get a black eye for saying this too, but dig down, far enough down, and you'll probably find out that somewhere along the line we all share the same root heritage.
Absolutely.
People don't believe that, especially when the race business is played into it.
Yes.
But more or less, that's exactly how it is. That's exactly how it goes.
Yes. And I think, even as we become more modern and we're kind of transitioning, for me personally, I understand that if we don't know our history, well, we're doomed as a people, because that plays such an important part in just our overall progress and where we do want to go and what our vision is for the Cayman Islands. I thank you for reaching out, first of all, and for being so willing to speak with us this afternoon.
I agree with you there, and it's a known saying, if you don't know where you come from, you won't know where you're going.
Absolutely.
And that is for sure.
Yes.
And I am proud, very proud of my heritage.
Yes.
I consider myself humble, but I'm very proud of my heritage. I come from a very mixed race of people.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Watler. I certainly enjoyed this segment with you this afternoon. And we'll be back soon.
Good. I look forward to sitting and talking with you. I'll tell you one thing. A lot of it that I'll tell you, you won't want to put on your program, that's for sure. But it will be good.
We'll put it all there.
It will be good for you to know exactly what is what.
Yeah. No, our listeners, they want to know. They want to know the ins and outs and the behind the scenes stories. So.
Whoa.
Oh, yes. That's why we call it the Mall Road, you know.
That's true.
Because we want it all. And we know you guys have quite a number of memories and stories to share.
Yeah, you better believe it. You better believe it. You better
Yes.
believe it.
Well,
You
thank
better
you so
believe
much,
it.
my dear. Really appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Keep in touch.